Thanks for coming, and I'm going to hand over to Dan to introduce the session.
Thanks, Sam. Right, good morning, everybody. I'm Dan from Doco, not Doco. Good morning and welcome to our session, and welcome to the millions watching across the web as well, which is great. A warm welcome to those in the room and those watching on the stream. This is called Never Mind the Buzz, and we work with some really fantastic entertainment clients across TV, film and gaming at Doco, and we really wanted to get this on the agenda for Social Media Week, because now is just an incredibly exciting and important time for social and entertainment. You can watch a movie on Facebook. Applications like Zbox and Red Discover, that we're going to talk about a bit later, enable you to do some really exciting things with two areas converging in a way that we've never seen before. So given that we've got a strong legacy of working in this area, we really wanted to get this on the agenda. We're really thrilled to be supporting Social Media Week, and I'm not going to take up too much time because we've only got about an hour for the panel. So I'm going to hand over to John, who's moderating the session. Enjoy and tweet away, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm good. Thanks very much for making the time. We have a packed schedule as we try to cut through the buzz, cut through the bollocks, I should say, and find the buzz in social media. I'm going to work our way down the panel, but just to give you a quick introduction, we are going to spend roughly 45 minutes, as I say, trying to figure out what the real value of social media is for entertainment brands. Just to end up with about 15 minutes of predictions. We're going to get our panel to gaze into their crystal balls and give us a view of what the world might look like in 2017. And then we'll have 10 minutes at the end of heckling questions and other penetrating queries from you guys. If you've got anything really burning you're desperate to ask before that, do stick your hand up and I'll try and cut in. But to get us going, here's our panel. We're down one, as you'll probably notice. Andrew from Digital Spy is apparently stuck on a train. So when he does arrive, if you could all applaud wildly as he walks down the middle, just so he knows that we've noticed him. But to get us going, we're going to work our way down the panel. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and just to make a few opening remarks about their view on the real value of social media for entertainment. Steve.
Good morning. So my name is Steve Plunkett. I'm the Director of Technology and Innovation for a company called Red Bee Media, that you may be familiar with. We work very much in the television industry and involved in lots of technology and creative aspects of social discovery and social media. So I think entertainment has always been a very social experience, and as entertainment is now experienced with technology online, lots more content, video content available on different devices and platforms, it's entirely appropriate that social media should help enrich that experience, help engage an audience. We're investing in lots of technology on second screens, for example, that allow the viewer to engage and discuss and exchange ideas and comments around television content. So I think it's a very exciting space. I think it will grow in importance. It's already very important for our existing clients. I think if you don't have a social media strategy, you're in the entertainment business, you've got some challenges ahead. So.
Steve, thank you so very, I think, is our first answer.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Karen.
Hi. I'm Karen Krizanovich. I'm a writer and broadcaster. Currently, I tweet a lot about film, the film business, and I think what's really important for me, I mean, I've been talking about film, analog, actually, way before the interwebs, and I think what social media does, as far as entertainment goes, is it makes the world more of a smaller community in a way, a larger community in a way, but I still think that talking about what you like and what you don't like and why is vital to how entertainment works, and that it's any kind of entertainment, whether it's television or film or whatever. And I think it's important not to be dazzled by technology and understand exactly why we like this technology, what it allows us to do. So, pretty simple, really. That's about it.
Fantastic.
Hi, my name is Paul. I'm from Google. I think building on Karen's point, I think content is still king. In reality, there's a symbiosis between social and content. If I was waiting for a curry last night, very romantic with my wife. I thought she wouldn't cook. I'd wait for a curry. Chaos in the restaurant. Sitting there for an hour watching EastEnders with the sound off, but watching the Twitter feed at the same time. So I think in reality is that the two things work hand in hand with each other. So dual screening is really key. And also there is a big challenge for the entertainment industry around time shifting about different platforms, but in reality, if it's great content, it feeds off of social and vice versa.
Hi, I'm Amelia Gammon and I work for 20th Century Fox. My role at 20th Century Fox is to monetize film and TV content through the mobile platform. And so for me, our apps particularly live or die by social media. Our ability to have success is 100% dependent on people talking about what we're doing. In terms of the future of social media and entertainment, I think the film and TV companies have a really interesting future ahead of them. Now we have the opportunity to hear what people really think about our product. And I guess the question is, are we going to listen to that and how are we going to address it? Thanks, everyone.
That's gone off. Okay, thanks. Yeah, hello again. Dan from Doco, Director of Social Marketing. I mentioned a couple of things in the intro to do with applications like ZBox and Red Discover, which I think are just incredible. And even in the last couple of days, some of the new developments on the ZBox platform that now enable you to potentially buy something that features in the commercial break on a program with a Z tag is just amazing, and what that's going to do to the TV advertising industry will be incredibly interesting to watch over the next few months. I think most importantly for me, the thing that really excites me at the moment is the way social media has this incredible halo effect, and it can take what would otherwise potentially be a small program. I'll give you an example of something like Celebrity Juice on ITV2, which has absolutely lived off of social media. It's a program on what would otherwise be a relatively small digital channel, but it's got enormous reach through social. You have celebrities checking in and tweeting live during the show, enormous numbers of followers. So the fact that you can take what would otherwise be a small property and turn it into a huge one through social is incredibly exciting for me at the moment.
It's Andrew. If we could all cue wild applause.
Sorry.
Thank you, Andrew. You've made it. Perfect timing as well.
Yes, thanks to British Rail. What was British Rail. I've finally made it, yes.
Andrew, your timing's brilliant, because everyone has just given their answer to the first question.
Okay.
And introduced themselves briefly. So if you don't mind jumping in at the deep end.
Yeah, sure.
How important is social for the future of entertainment market?
Hugely, I think. I mean,
Right.
I think what we're looking at is the first stages of a changing the way people interact with entertainment content, changing the way people kind of interact with companies as well, which brings massive new challenges, both in terms of privacy, in terms of sort of engagement and what you give up in that process as a consumer. But for companies, it's a huge opportunity to learn more about the consumers in real time, gain massive amounts of information that they can use, both for right up to the commissioning stage, the business stage, and also to make people feel that they have a kind of stake in what they're actually consuming, which is really, really exciting and important, but huge challenges ahead.
Well, hopefully we'll come on to those in a moment. Right. So that's some opening remarks, and I think there's a strong consensus that the word very is the answer to the first question. We thought we might start a little bit now just by stepping back a bit and thinking about the wider market. And I guess the first question I was hoping the panel could pick up on is to give us a sense of where this market is today. So Facebook, as of this morning, was claiming just over 30 million UK users. That's nearly half the UK population, most of whom log in on a pretty regular basis. Is this a mature market? Is it going to look markedly different in 2015, 2017? Or are we kind of mostly there? Paul?
Okay, is that mic on? Fantastic. Okay, I've got the secret mic. Can you pick it up? Can I pick this up?
Oh,
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I think Facebook have done a great job at socialising digital users. I think it's a fairly mature market now, so it's not a question about penetration, it's a question about how people use different platforms. So as people become more au fait with the social spaces, whether I need 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 different types of tools to get my job done, So it's a social graph, an interest graph, is it video, is it broadcasting your thoughts to the world? So I think there's a long way to go. You can see by the growth of Pinterest, for example, very recently, that the people are still looking for new stuff to do. So who would ever thought that a sort of a visual pin board would be something that would be growing so quickly? But something obviously people want to do.
But you do think it's pretty mature in terms of penetration?
In reality, yeah. I mean, you know, pretty much everyone. Who's not got a Facebook profile in this room? Any hands up? Yeah, exactly. So that's 100% penetration here. So, you know, I think that's pretty mature.
Andrew, are you on the same view? A mature market?
Yeah,
or?
I think personally, I mean, what I find interesting is where it goes. I mean, 2017, what, 5 years away, we're now seeing, like, you see a company now and it's got email, phone, and it's also got Facebook and Twitter. It's almost like becoming just a standard now. This is what we've had to get in touch with us. So how does that change going forward? It's still got a kind of like unusual kind of tint to it at the moment, but as that kind of becomes forward, are we going to see this like another form of communication? Like, you know, you wouldn't say nowadays that email was particularly exciting. It's something that we go, oh wow, we've all got email. Wow, you know, everybody's got email. So in 5 years' time, is that how we're going to look at social networks, and what are the implications of that? If it's standardized, where does the differentiation come within it, and how does that change the actual platforms themselves?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it probably hasn't reached its ceiling, but it's now in that long tail, and you know, you'll always get people adding to it over time, but it's probably reached a critical mass. I think the really important thing is that half of those people log on every day. So of the 30 million, you've got 15 million who are logging into it every day. And Paul, as you mentioned, it's about usage and application. I think we're still struggling at the moment to figure out how people are going to consume content through Facebook. I think gaming is reasonably well established, but some would argue that that's quite niche, and we're doing some work with our clients at the moment around the consumption of film and television programs through Facebook, and consumers aren't quite getting it yet. I think there's a bit of a journey for people to go on to understand how to integrate these two things. If people are happy to do it on a single screen or want to do it on a second screen. But I think the future for it is definitely going to be about more diverse applications and using it in different ways that will ultimately drive more people onto it on a regular basis rather than growth in penetration.
So we know there's a really natural synergy between Facebook and short-form video. I think it's the biggest referrer of traffic to YouTube globally, obviously after search. It's the long-form consumption piece, which is still a bit of a question. Steve, do you think people will be consuming lots of long-form film and TV content actually on Facebook itself in 2017?
I think it's an interesting question. I think many of the content community, the broadcasters, are looking and differentiating between Facebook as a destination and Facebook as a platform. Facebook as a platform is very, very interesting, very powerful. It has that huge number of users. As a destination, where their content's going to be, you know, in a co-branded environment with Facebook, it's a very different question. I think going back to your original thoughts, 2017, 5 years from now, if we went back 5 years from here, you know, Twitter was not a year old. Facebook was still a small entity. So I think the concept of social communication, as Andrew said, like email, is well established. It's hard to imagine it being different and receding in 2017, but the application and usage of a platform like Facebook is still uncertain. It's still very much in its infancy. And I think we'd be, you know, be excited about what's coming, but I wouldn't be as bold as predict absolute dominance for one particular platform.
So basically, we haven't got a clue as to how much long form will be consumed actually on Facebook. Is it basically a referral platform? It's going to push people out on-demand services, but we're not going to have much VOD content consumed on it?
One of the things that we've done recently is, with a Red Discover platform, allow TV guides, whether it's an iPad application or a web application, to have a Facebook integration. So in that case, somebody can check into a piece of programming and it's visible on a user's TV guide, their particular friends, their icon, their avatar picture from Facebook. So it's helping draw attention to stuff that's on the linear schedule or something that's online. The Facebook environment is not wrapped around that. It's contained within a broadcaster domain. And I think that the use of social referral and social recommendation is huge and enormous. Whether it's curated within a Facebook environment is different.
I was just going to say, I think with regard to VOD, you mentioned just now, there's really big potential where there's a familiar product. So we've seen some genuine success with library films where they're very well known and inherently social. They've already got social communities built around them. People are quite familiar with lines in the film, with characters, you know, they could probably repeat the film backwards. They seem to work incredibly well, so there's definitely space for VOD to work. Where you've got less familiar product, then sort of it's more uncharted territory at the moment. But I think there definitely is potential for VOD. It's such an early stage on social platforms. Like
Can I just ask the panel about Twitter? How mature is Twitter as a product? I mean, usage numbers in the UK are pretty variable, you know, but it's usually people claim somewhere between 7 and 15 million, which is a pretty wide spread. Is this a mature product in your view? Do you think it will be double the size in will it be up at Facebook levels in 2017 or?
Who wants the mic? Take it. You look good.
I think it's certainly getting there. I mean, you look at kind of the way that people engage with Twitter nowadays, you know, around TV shows, around news. I mean, it's hugely influential around those spaces. You know, people sharing content as well on there, you know, like a lot of posted links, you know, obviously around big events, massive amounts of kind of links and photos get put on there. But I don't think, it's a bit of a different one really, isn't it? Because it's like, it's more of an information stream, Twitter, and whereas Facebook is more of a kind of what you would say was a platform. I think what's interesting about like kind of Facebook in terms of it being a referral platform, I mean, I think after the IPO, I don't think they're going to want it to be a referral platform. They're going to want you to spend as much time on that platform as possible, and hopefully turn it into the internet. You know, I would, you know, they want you to be on there, watching your videos, playing your games, going with your friends, as long as you can get on there as possible, because that will put more eyeballs on adverts and that will drive up the revenue, and that's where I think that's going. With Twitter, it's a bit different, isn't it? It's about kind of information. It's about having conversations around big events. So actually,
do you think
putting the events on Twitter is not the point.
No.
It's putting Twitter around events that's the kind of the point for me.
Does that mean its appeal is inherently more limited than Facebook's?
I think they're doing quite a lot at the moment, actually, to align it more closely with Facebook. So, like the enhanced brand pages that are rolling out now, they've got pretty much identical ability. You can embed video. Just gives brands many more opportunities than they've sort of currently had. So it does feel like it's moving a little bit away from being about microblogging to a bit more immersive content. But it's early days.
One last quick question before we move on. I guess the other thing we've seen in the last year has been a kind of explosion of new entrants, you know, either pulling data off Facebook or Twitter, things like Zbox and so on, or integrating with it. Do you see that continuing? Are we going to see a lot more of that kind of activity, building on these platforms? More Pinterests and other things? Karen?
I mean, yeah, I think that's probably right. I think that, well, you know, I feel like I'm in the wrong class. I feel like I'm an undergraduate. I want to ask the big, stupid questions. For example, doesn't advertising models, is it still working? What is the future of revenue, particularly for content providers, not only users?
Trust me, we'll get there.
Are we going to get, okay, sorry, jumping ahead. It's a promise. I've had so many broken promises yesterday, you know. No, just kidding. But I think that well, personally, I'm very wary of bigness. I'm very wary of big brands, and I'm very wary of having my data and what I'm doing being controlled. So I'm very interested in the flexibility that there is out there. And what I think is really interesting is that I've already seen a phase. For example, Posterous. A lot of my friends went off Posterous and are now onto Pinterest. Pinterest, that's right. Yeah, it's good. I've only had one cup of coffee, so I'm going to get it all wrong. But I really think that there's a great deal of choice out there. And I think, I don't know, I mean, just think of the thousands of years people were writing by hand. Now we've got this huge technological change. And frankly, I'm waiting for the chip in my head so I don't have to carry this around. So who knows where it's going to go? I know it's all like Star Trek, but yeah.
So more new stuff, I think. Right.
Well, lots more, yeah, hopefully.
Let's jump on then and try and boil down some really practical case studies. Amelia, if you had to single out a single media and entertainment company that is really doing social well, who would you point at?
Well, I should say Fox. but I'm not going to, unfortunately.
You won't.
Actually, before I talk about how our competitors are doing it slightly better than we are, I just want to give one example of something that I think is really interesting. So, Fox, particularly in the US, Fox Network is all about our TV channel, and that's where we premiere all of our new shows, and it's where the majority of our efforts are. Social media is used to support that, but ultimately we want people to be watching our shows on the television when they're first broadcast. That being said, we had a really interesting initiative this year. So the broadcast season in the US starts in September, and we had a new TV show start called New Girl, starring Zooey Deschanel. Hopefully you've seen it. And that actually premiered online before we put it out on the broadcast network, which I think is a really good testament to the fact that even the people that are kind of obsessed with keeping things on TV in a linear fashion recognize that the amount of social media buzz that we can get for a premiere of an episode can actually help us in the overall viewing figures in the network. So I think, you know, that's a good example of where we're starting to go.
What makes you think Fox isn't doing it well?
I don't want to spend too much time on that. I will spend time on what I think other people are doing well. So, I mean, generally, I think what's interesting, I'm going to spend some time with the broadcasters. What's interesting about what the broadcasters are doing, particularly in the US, is how they're enabling people to interact with their brands. And the most basic version of that would be something like an American Idol, which obviously we've had interaction through voting for some time. But it's actually taking it to the other level. And I know that we go on to multi-screen later on in the conversation, but enabling people to interact with the brand whilst they're also watching it on the mainstream television. And we've taken it, we've seen broadcasters take it one step further, and they are aware that people are going to be browsing the internet at the same time as watching their TV shows. So not only are they offering them a complementary experience, they're giving them a completely different experience, whether that's a different angle TV viewing, whether there's a social commentary running so people can comment on what they're seeing. And I think something like an American Idol is a really good example of that.
Okay. Any other examples from a panel of people doing this really well? Does anybody really stand out?
I think some of the work that Disney have done around...
One of your biggest clients?
Not through us, genuinely not through us.
Okay.
This is wasn't our initiative at all. But I think what they've done with the Muppets is really interesting. The fact they allowed Kermit to take over Twitter for a period of time and just had an unprecedented number of questions that were posted. The kind of reach that you're getting through not just the initial tweets but the retweets and so on. I just think it's a very interesting case study for how you take a franchise in the movie world and you build huge amounts of buzz and interest. I think it drove a huge number of additional followers on Twitter whilst it was live. I mentioned Celebrity Juice before. I think ITV2 are doing a fantastic job on social media, really, really do. Sort of programs like Only Way is Essex and Celebrity Juice absolutely rely and thrive upon success in social space. Channel 4 doing it very well with Skins as well. So I think in the UK as well as in the US, we've got some really good examples of broadcasters and film companies doing a good job.
Can I ask, just to boil it down, what benefits are they actually realising from all this activity? Is this just about super serving fans?
Ratings.
Ratings.
So there are people who wouldn't otherwise watch, who are now watching because of the social media activity?
Yeah, I think you get ratings. I mean, I think to take on the Only Way is Essex example, don't take this as an endorsement of the show from myself, but Geordie Shore on MTV, the fantastic Geordie Shore. I mean, they very much from the outset, MTV very much went for social. They gave all the cast Blackberries, they gave them Twitter training, they told them to be as they want it to be. And I think the top ones got about 175,000 followers. They've just released an app where you can live tweet during the show, but you can also watch a video of them answering Twitter questions after the show airs, the cast. So you've created this kind of, kind of a whole infrastructure around, which taps into people talking about it. And it does work. I mean, the first series was their highest UK rating show, I think, in about 10 years.
I mean, to play devil's advocate, I suppose, it was obviously based on a hugely successful US show, which had massive buzz.
But the thing is, people were already talking about this, so they're already going to go on Twitter, they're already going to talk about it. So you either kind of let it, if it's already happening, why not make the most of it? And sure. I think if you kind of bring it in-house as much as you can, you do kind of think, the tangible benefits, well, it's difficult to say for certain, but certainly, I mean, if the app you can sell advertising on, obviously if the ratings drives up, you can drive up the ad revenue. But of course, the flip side of that is if you do bring these things in-house, there is the downside of this is an unmoderated discussion. There may be things that you don't like, and there may be things which are pretty bad. You know, you're swearing, worse. There was a good example recently of a cinema in Australia that put a live stream on its website of a Twitter feed, and it was getting comments like, I can't wait to see The Descendants, George Clooney is so effing hot. On a family-orientated website, that got pretty bad, you know, to have all that effing and jeffing. So I think you have to realise that there are pluses and minuses to this. You might get extra traffic, but you could end up with a rather embarrassing situation.
Daniel.
Sorry.
Dive in, no, interrupt.
Okay, so I was going to say, clearly having the first hit with ratings on TV, or whether it's getting people into the cinema for a movie, is one of the most vital parts of using social media. But for me, I think it's about developing a long-lasting and very rich relationship between the consumer and that IP. So when a new film releases, clearly we want to get them into the cinema. That affects all sorts of other deals that we have further down the line. But what's really important, and I think that Dan mentioned this earlier, is that people feel so engaged with the property that even when it's 15, 20 years old, they still have a conversation about it. And that's about the first instance, maintaining a relationship, making them feel that they trust this brand, they want to interact with it, so they will continue to do so through their own lifetime.
Yeah, I've got a little factoid here as well. So I was reading last night, there's a Nielsen McKinsey report from last year that said there's a 9% increase for in chatter from 18 to 34-year-olds drives a 1% increase in ratings. So 9% more buzz,
brilliant, that's
1% more ratings. A little factoid for you there. You know, not sure how representative that is, but supposedly a large panel.
So there is some evidence.
There is some evidence, yes.
Is it mainly about supporting existing franchises? Are there examples of it building new ones?
So this is slightly social, but it's slightly not. So hopefully this answers your question. So as a company, we did a partnership with Rovio, the guys that had the very successful Angry Birds Rio game. And we launched a new game called Angry Birds Rio, which was a conjunction between Angry Birds, the kind of mechanic we all love, and Rio, which is a new movie that we launched last year. This app actually released about 6 weeks prior to the movie, and Rio has never been seen before. It's not part of a franchise. It's a completely new idea. And we launched the app, and by the time the movie came out, we had about 12 million people who'd already downloaded the application. We had some exit poll results to ask how many people had actually played the game before they went to go and see the film, and it was a shockingly high percentage. And I think that's a really good testament to how actually this social media kind of new platforms can help launch new IP.
Can you give us the percentage?
No, but I can tell you. So we launched that March last year, and we've passed the 120 million download mark for that app. Wow. So not bad.
Daniel, you were desperate to get in.
No, I just wanted to say that we've mentioned ratings and box office, and it all depends on the objectives of what you're trying to achieve. And the other really important thing to mention is good customer service as well, because it's ultimately, it's social media, it's nothing new, it's conversation. It's conversation that's been going on for years, it just happens to be happening in a different space. You need to listen if you're having conversation. There are many brands, I think, that just go into the social space without a very clear understanding of what they're going to do when people start responding. It is an open network. You can say whatever you like. You run the danger, as the Australian Cinema channel did, and I myself was in that position about a year ago, where we opened up our live our Twitter feed at View, and similarly got some pretty scary, horrendous comments and had to turn it off very fast. So the listening part is incredibly important, and I read a really interesting stat the other day that only 1% of people, brand owners who look after social media channels, are from a customer service background, the majority are from a marketing background. That real lack of customer service in the social media mix is a real shame, and something that probably needs to be readdressed.
And that's mainly presumably for subscription businesses?
I think so.
Yeah.
But you have to be, I think you have to be really careful, just to add to that point, being dragged into the conversation. I mean, on our forums, you know, I've had quite a few companies that have been dragged into a conversation, and you ain't going to win, and it's going to be really damaging. I think you've got to be really careful. You've got to treat it like a mini press release, I think. Any tweet's got to be like a mini press release. It's got to be like, you know, and you've got to think, what's the message we're going for, and what are we going to respond? Because otherwise, you get dragged into a conversation, and God knows where you're going.
Have any examples of real disasters you can share with us?
A lady never tells.
Can I ask, it sounds like there's some real evidence of marketing benefits, clearly, and the customer service point. Are there any direct revenue generation opportunities that you're aware of for media and entertainment companies? Are there companies actually, I mean, people like Zynga are obviously making a lot of money. Yeah. Any media and entertainment companies doing the same? Steve?
To your previous question, one good example I've seen of a broadcaster using a social media event was UK TV with their Eden channel, and they were looking to increase the viewership amongst a younger demographic. So they ran an event called Ask Attenborough at the Natural History Museum, and it was supported in the build-up and during and after the event with lots of social media, and there was very measurable increases in that younger demographic being on channel after the event. And that, of course, relates then to BAB ratings and relates to advertising revenue. So you can see some measurable relationships.
It feels like another good marketing benefit, doesn't it? But I suppose I'm wondering about people actually making money on the platform in the way that, say, a Zynga does. Anybody got any examples? Or?
Well, I guess it's not directly applicable, but on YouTube, for example, we have thousands of power users who are making a good living out of becoming content creators. I think one thing we've not really talked about, we've talked about media owners in the traditional sense of the word, but not about the little guys who produce huge followings. So that's an interesting spin on the whole content media owner piece. And obviously with platforms like YouTube, traditional media owners are starting to monetize long form content as well. So I think there's a whole different range of opportunities out there.
I think you really can't look much further than gaming. I mean, you've already pointed it out, but these guys have made games, created games with not social as a bolt-on, but social at the heart. They've made it for social, and they've made a revenue stream that goes into tens of millions of dollars from something which is played by most players for free. I mean, it's an astonishing business model. You look at something like Farmville. Zynga makes up, I think, 12% of Facebook's revenue, but yet most Farmville players, play for free, and they make these micropayments. They just add up. There's little tiny little marks, tiny little percentages, but over a massive user base, it makes sense, and that is a very brave business model, but it has worked, and it's incredibly valuable for those companies.
But how specific to games is it? I mean, is that the kind of model that you can see? I mean, there's lots of activity around things like download to own, download to rent content, film content. Do you see that taking off?
Sorry, but I think also when we're going back to a few points before, you're creating communities, you're making people feel engaged, but when you feel more engaged and you actually are more willing to spend for extra things, and that's where gaming has really showed the value of it, which I suppose in other fields would be merchandising. In this field it's micropayments, it's small things, it's transactions. You're discussing it all the time. You say, oh, I've got this, I've got that. You speak to any gamer, and they will say, oh, I bought all the DLC for downloadable content for a game, I bought everything, and I bought all this. That can add like 20 or 30 pounds to a product which is already quite expensive. I suppose
what's interesting is whether it extends beyond the gaming space, because gaming is clearly a huge, enormous area. Do you think it goes further than that?
I think the currency is probably one of the biggest barriers at the moment, in that gaming is so well established, and all the micropayments for the DLC that you mentioned, people are very, very familiar with how that works. But you ask most people in the street, in fact probably most people in this room, have you purchase something on Facebook using Facebook credits? Quick show of hands. Oh. Okay, versus the number of people that had a Facebook account is quite small. So I think there's definitely a barrier there in terms of that as a currency at the moment and how it works. I think new commercial models, new payment options have to come in first, because it still feels a very niche thing at the moment to purchase directly via Facebook. But it will happen. I think they just need to find a partner who will effectively offer the Trojan horse and take the content to a large number of people.
But they have to be brave as well. I mean, why, if I have a box set, why don't I just offer the first episode for free, watch the first episode, right, you want to watch the rest, here's so-and-so and so. I mean, it's not it's cliche, but it's not rocket science, is it really? They've already shown you the business model, offer something for free, and then ask them to pay. I mean, that's it.
Amelia, I was going to say, as our token studio rep, how far away are we from that?
Do you know what? I think the issue right now is that there are many ways that you can purchase film and TV content. You can go to iTunes, you could go to Love Film, you could go to Netflix, you could go to all these different platforms. the disconnect is relating that to what goes on Facebook or these other social media sites. So Netflix, I think, is making a really interesting move in the UK. I don't know how many of you signed up, but the only way to sign up for a 3-month trial is if you sign up via Facebook. And I think that's the first of a kind of a growing trend where we're going to see the services that enable you to purchase content linking to the services that enable you to talk about it. So I think the business model is already there. I just think we need to kind of bridge that gap.
Let's jump on and talk about mobile, since you've got the mic. Is mobile the killer platform for social interaction? I mean, when you look at Facebook stats, mobile is by far and away the fastest growing area of usage for Facebook. It's also the area in which they flag as their biggest risk. I think they're not making very much money in mobile at this point. How's the mobile social space going to play out?
I think mobile is perfect for an instant reaction, which is why mobile and Twitter work so well together. I think mobile as part of a multi-platform offering is where all of the social the value really has for social interaction, because although I can respond to something immediately whilst I'm out and about, I may not take the time to view a video or consume something in more depth until I'm actually at a more stationary position.
It feels pretty good, I mean, for news and for things that have that immediacy about them. What about for entertainment brands? Is there a specific mobile social opportunity?
I think it's pretty huge. If you look at all the stats, I mean, when we talk about mobile, it doesn't mean to say you're just out on the street. You're watching, typically you've got your mobile device with you when you're watching television. So, you know, we saw that 41% from the Super Bowl last week, 41% of all searches to do with the ads on the Super Bowl shows were from mobile devices. And that's people sitting in their front rooms with their iPhones and their Androids and their Blackberries or their iPads or their Android tablets looking at stuff. So I think mobile's pretty key and is a killer app because it's a way of delivering the fidelity of interaction outside of sitting at a desktop and doing stuff. So I think it's a really powerful opportunity there. Also, I think, you know, for live events, you know, whether it's you know, music festivals, mobile must be pretty key there. Big thing to look about. But then, I guess the other sort of interesting but very nascent area is digital TV, sort of the connected box. So, for us to predict by 2015, half of all households in the US will have Wi-Fi enabled TV sets. And lots of businesses are planning to or getting involved in connected television sets. So I think mobile's pretty key, and at the moment I think it's key because of the front room. It's not about being in the streets, it's about being in the front room, tweeting about stuff, or posting stuff on a social platform, and commenting. And outside of that, then when the TVs come along, what does that mean? Does that change everything again, or does it make it even more interactive?
I think what's interesting about mobile is that, obviously, I have watched films on my iPad. I haven't done it while I've been driving or walking, hopefully.
Thank God.
And anybody who walks while they text, if I catch you, I will punch you. But I think I tweeted a few weeks ago about I think it was a Canadian guy traveling across the border. I could have the story wrong, where his kids were like happily watching Netflix, and it was a $10,000 bill that he got for roaming. So I think we're still in early days of doing that kind of thing. But I think that what's really important about considering mobile is also the way we live. People are downsizing necessarily or by choice. And I don't want a big screen, I want a smaller screen. I want to be able to move wherever I need to go. Somebody's going to repossess my house, I'm taking my viewing system with me, you know? And I think it's important to look at it in a demographic. I mean, I know you're all business people here, but I mean, I'm more of a reporter and consumer, I suppose, and snide commenter. But I think that it's important to see the flexibility of this and also how people really are going to live rather than how you want them to live.
I think I endorse that mobile is the killer platform. I think for many people in the developing world, it's the only platform. It's the only way they engage with the content on the internet in any way. There's an app ecosystem which is much more sophisticated and developed in the mobile space compared to PCs. The ability to push content to a mobile device is much more well defined. The push platforms that exist on Apple, for example, it's ubiquitous. It's always with you. So I think for all of those reasons, mobile is absolutely. If we include tablets in that definition, it's going to be entirely dominant, I would suggest, for entertainment brands.
And we're going to talk about twin screening in a moment, but is that the big opportunity for entertainment brands, or are there? I mean, is this just an extension of the standard social opportunities we've talked about already, or is there something new and distinct about mobile? I mean, location we haven't talked about yet.
I was going to avoid talking about the dual screen things. I know we're going to come onto it in a minute and sort of really eager to discuss it. But the thing with mobile, I've heard it described as the most persuasive device because of the location element. So it's no accident, as Amelia said, that Twitter was the social network that was embedded into iOS 5 because it's quick and easy, and that's the kind of way that you use your mobile phone. You're not really going to spend huge amounts of time in deep concentration unless you're using your mobile phone on a train or a tube or something, but when you're walking and you're out and about. But location and being able to pinpoint where somebody is and serve them a timely, relevant offer. Certainly had experimented on this early days when I was working brand owner side, and it can be incredibly effective if you can pinpoint and deliver a promotion or an offer to somebody who's about to consume a piece of entertainment.
Hugely powerful for retail brands.
Yep.
You know, it's a massive, you know, channel, obviously. For entertainment brands, it feels a bit more nebulous for location piece. Am I missing something?
Depends if the entertainment brand partners with the retailer. So
Right.
it's a huge opportunity there where perhaps if you want to drive somebody in to watch a specific movie in a specific place at a specific time, and you can offer the promotion via mobile device, it can be very powerful.
Yeah, I haven't got any examples, but I can imagine like live events would be massive.
Yeah.
So all the retailing, merchandising opportunities there would be, you know, immense.
I think the future is I mean, I'm really more, I hope I live a long time and able to see all this. But I was reading from the tsunami, in Japan, that there was an invention, and maybe somebody here knows this, that they're developing a screen that floats in the air. It's a collection of molecules. And it's initially for displaying text, I believe. God, please don't say it was just me. Yeah, I just dreamed it. It didn't actually happen. And all I could think of was, yeah, I could just watch a film without a screen at all. That'd be great. And then a friend of mine who's a producer said, yeah, but what about sound? Damn. You know, so I mean, when you're talking about twin screening, I'm thinking about Arnold Schwarzenegger as Terminator. I'm looking at it being screened from my eye onto my glasses. I'm not holding anything. So I mean, really, we're talking about technology, about quality of viewing experience, but in a way, we're still talking about the quality of the experience. And I think that's where marketing and selling to consumers is really, I don't know, that's what, those are the ripples that go through the community. If you get the quality right, and you've also got a good content, then I think that people will find out and they will follow you, whether that's by word of mouth or Twitter or otherwise.
Right, why don't we jump ahead and get into twin screening then, which everyone's desperate. Paul, is ZBox worth $150 million?
I've no idea. I think.
Or put another way, this is an area where a lot of people have suggested there's a huge amount of buzz and even more bollocks.
Well,
what's the real twin screening?
Comment on value of companies or whether they're. But I would say, you know, it's a really interesting territory. You've got things like Mizo and ZBox and a couple others who are looking at exploring that space. If you think about the TV viewing experience, it's pretty poor. EPG on even Sky isn't optimal, and they know that, trying to make it better. So how can we, or how can the entertainment business make your life easier finding stuff and commenting on stuff? So I think ZBox is a really interesting way of augmenting an EPG experience. Whether it's actually going to work or not, I don't know, but it's pretty early doors.
And just give us some context. Steve, obviously, twin screening, I think, is something you've done a little bit around. How big an opportunity is this? What is the opportunity?
We think it's huge. So I think the ability for, let's look at broadcasters specifically, to augment their content with a second screen. There's many different aspects of that. Content discovery, having an intelligent, personalized EPG, which recognizes your interests and your likes and presents those to you. We've created, we launched 2 weeks ago for Veronica, which is a publisher in the Netherlands, the Radio Times of the Netherlands, essentially, and they have a TV channel. And we launched a very socially interactive iPad application, which overlays Twitter statistics, so you can see which shows in the schedule are trending right now based on the level of conversation around a show. It overlays your Facebook friends and so on. So for discovery, second screen, fantastic. You can change the TV channels in the future as you have connected TVs that are integrated. But I think the really interesting area is when the content itself is somehow augmented. So we, working with Fox and FX UK, launched a Walking Dead companion application that went on the iTunes store last weekend. The new series airs on Friday evening. I'd recommend everyone have a look at the app. It's really, really interesting because it's providing an element of gamification around a TV show. It's not distracting heavily from the content. You make predictions about how many zombies will be killed by which weapon, by which character. It fits the genre and it fits the fan base fantastically well. Includes Twitter integration. News organisations are looking at doing something similar to provide much more depth around news programming. So the range of applications, whether it's drama, news, the obvious ones like game shows are almost so obvious. The play-along capability of those shows. So I think dual screening will be enormously important. It'll be hard to imagine in the not-too-distant future any premiere TV show not having a branded second screen experience, as well as the independent experience from ZBox and GetGlue and all those other companies.
And those experiences will be social?
They'll be highly social. They'll include elements of social. So, again, for the Walking Dead application, at the end of the game, the show, I should say, the game ends and your score is put on screen, and you can tweet and Facebook those results with your friends, and that will drive more downloads of the app, more engagement with the show. So social will be used as a communication tool around that experience.
For me, what's more interesting is which is the second screen. So we've talked a lot about how we're kind of supplementing the TV experience. But what I'm particularly interested in, and we've started exploring, is actually if the second screen is the TV and the first screen is the tablet or the phone, is there an opportunity for us to deliver the initial experience on a smaller screen and then have a complementary experience on the second screen? So, I mean, we're spending a lot of time trying to find ways to make sure that when people buy a movie to own, that we give them a very rich and highly valued experience. So for a second screen app where the first screen is the television, it means the second screen you can see different angles from the director's cut. You can push through to purchase any of the items that appear within that product. So Sons of Anarchy is a really good example. We had a complimentary app where you could purchase some of the clothes that the Sons of Anarchy guys wore. But going back to my first comment about the second screen being the television, and actually kind of playing on the part that there are many countries in the world where television penetration is actually quite small and mobile penetration is incredibly high, is what we're exploring now is how can we have that initial experience on the device. So have an application. Within that application, perhaps we have a movie, trivia, additional content, and then you choose which screen you watch each of those different content items on.
I think what's interesting, I was talking, my dad's 90 and he's on Skype, which is great. I was talking to him, I said, pretty soon you'll be able to get rid of your television. He said, well, how would I run the big screen? I said, well, you just do it like you're doing it now. And I'm just wondering, what do we need the television for if we've got a big monitor? We don't really need television unless it's editorializing to us. Is that right? Is it a holdover? I mean, really, if broadcast is going online more and more, where do we need television?
I'm not sure I would agree with that.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, I mean,
disagree.
Disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think. Okay. Sorry. I think all the statistics show that live TV viewing is still incredibly vibrant. It's still incredibly dominant. It's 90% of TV viewing. Barb data says that about 2 or 3% is on second screens. I mean, it's not official, but it's around that. So I think what we're seeing is the TV is still the heart of the home, but now we've got these extra screens that are bringing kind of new elements to it. It's integration. It's live conversation through Twitter. It's linking to Facebook pages. It was very interesting when we see how the new click to buy on ZBox works. I'm quite fascinated to see if we sort of create a new kind of impulse buy around that. It's very much cutting that lag between seeing an advert and buying a product. Does that make people more willing to buy at that stage, as you would buy a chocolate bar next to a cashier or something like that? And also I think there's a lot of questions as well of I suppose you could call it the attraction of distraction. If people are more focused on the second screen and the conversation than the program, particularly for dramas, what does that mean for content long term? I mean, if the drama's the painting and the Twitter's the frame, and you're looking at the frame, not the painting, well, what does that mean for content going forward?
Hey, look, we can be Dolly and Chris. No, sorry. Islands in the Stream. Let's go. No.
What am I singing voice?
No. That's 40 years out of date. Please give me another duet. Okay. The thing I want to say about that is that television's habit. It's embedded. Obviously, it's a technology. It's embedded. But is it that people don't want to choose? They want somebody to choose for them. was thinking, what's the difference between guiding someone to watch something online and watching television? Television chooses, it says, here, look at this, you don't like that, you change the channel. Whereas online, you've actually got to seek what you want. Is that the difference?
I think then you link into kind of the next sort of step, which is search and discovery. I mean, you look at something like Virgin TiVo platform, you know, it's got very advanced search and discovery systems which work on algorithms, they work on recommendations. You look at Netflix, you pop in a Netflix, you've put your things in. I mean, I go in there and it pops up, you know, documentaries and things like this, and you don't even realize what's going on, but there's a complex web. I mean, Netflix are really good at it. There's a complex web of how they use their ratings, how they use particular information about you, and they get things to the top of what is, I don't know how much content they've got, 20,000 odd movies or whatever, but they get things to the top which are linked to your interests. And actually, that data is not only valuable for kind of tailoring the process to you, but it's incredibly valuable to a corporate company. I mean, someone like Netflix, they use ratings data right up to the commissioning stage. So if something doesn't rate well, they will lower the price, or they will not commission it. And I mean, I spoke to them a while ago, and they literally does go up to that stage. So they will make a decision on paying tens of millions for something, often partially on whether it's rated well, pets rated well in the past. You know, this is you know, David Abraham, Channel 4 chief executive, calls this the new oil. You know, and it really is. It's incredibly valuable data about your users. Then, of course, privacy is another issue.
Daniel.
I just want to echo that. I think it's such an important point, because I've read too that Netflix are making commissioning decisions directly off the back of ratings, and shows will live or die off that basis. And also this year, for the first time ever in January, there was published a league table of the shows that were most tweeted about over Christmas. The BBC One, if anyone didn't see it, they got 8 out of the 10 top programmes. I think ITV just scraped in with Corrie and Downton. But yeah, the importance, I think we're going to come on to talk about whether or not buzz can determine whether a show lives or dies. I think it's incredibly important. What I love about ZBox in particular, and also Steve's application, Red Discover, is the way that you can see in real time what other people are doing. It's almost like putting Barb ratings in your hand, actually. You know, you're able to determine whether or not a program is being watched right now, whether it's popular or not. You can switch over. If you've got connected TV, the application switches the television over for you, which is fantastic. And yesterday lunchtime, little guilty pleasure, watching Loose Women, and I wasn't really, but I had the application open on my desk, and watching the live Z tags come up along the side, which were based around content for the program, which you expect, because that's kind of how ZBox works, so all the usual things that people are talking about. And then suddenly up crept a Z tag that said Nescafe, because you're now able to click to purchase based on what's in the break. So I started my career many years ago in TV ad sales, and I'll be really interested to see in sort of 6 months' time the impact that this kind of functionality is having on the way in which media is planned and bought.
Is it fair to say that twin screening predominantly is about protecting the live, or enhancing it in some way? The social discovery piece is about surfacing the huge libraries of on-demand and finding something in it. Is that,
I think
a fair simplification?
Yeah, potentially, but I mean, I think if you look at, I mean, we talked earlier about the nostalgia factor. You know, it's incredibly valuable in these kind of things. I mean, like on TiVo last year, 88% of the top shows that were searched for and discovered were not in Barb's top 50 most rated shows. You know, what we're seeing is people going back to old shows. Often there can be like chats about them, you know, I don't know, old kind of vintage things from the 70s, things which would never kind of be shown or come any prominence or be given any promotion. Because of the nature of the search systems are actually kind of becoming rediscovered. And that's an incredible valuable thing, especially for somebody like a Netflix who, or a Virgin who's maybe invested in long tails of content. To monetize that and to bring it up and get it used and watched and focused, that's incredibly valuable for them. And that's why those search systems and those social discovery systems are so valuable.
Right, Andrew, this is the real reason why Hollywood's remaking everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we want to go back and see the original.
Because you're watching it.
So
Stop watching it
now. Yeah.
Right. I think it's time to start having a little think about the future. Now, the bad news for you as an audience is this is where we're going to do some audience participation, I'm afraid. We're going to bring up a set of statements about the market in 2017. And I'm going to ask for a show of hands. First of all, everyone who agrees with the statement, stick your hand up, and we'll do a rough kind of count. And then everyone who disagrees, stick your hand up. And then we'll ask the panel if you're all smoking something or whether they agree with the majority. So let's just have a rehearsal and see how it goes. Our first prediction. By 2017, all major primetime entertainment shows on the major UK TV channels will be designed specifically to support twin screening activity. It won't be an accidental byproduct. They'll be designing it from the ground up. So everyone who agrees with this statement, stick your hand up. Oh.
Oh, we voted.
No, you can vote if you want. Everyone who disagrees with this statement. I think the agrees sort of broadly have it. Panel? Anyone got a view?
Can one of the disagreeers say why? Yep. That you can just sit back and be entertained. Hmm?
Just like I think we two as well, but unbelievably, or believe it or not everybody's online, not everyone has got an iPad.
That's
You know,
right.
it's like there's thousands of people in this country that can't afford an iPad, that just sit and watch television. You know, so it's remember that they exist as well.
Good point.
And I also think that 5 years away, and actually we sort of talk about this stuff, but the industry is quite slow at trying to, and I think doing it specifically for specifically in 5 years' time, I think is quite a 5 years isn't that long.
So healthy skepticism. Anyone on the panel got a particular view on this one?
I sort of agree and disagree. I mean, the TV set is the best piece of hardware you can buy to watch television programs on or films. I mean, you know, an iPad's great, it's very useful, but I think the gentleman at the back there was mentioning that TV in a box, so the hardware is fantastic. The issue is not about the content or the hardware, it's about the software which runs it. So the idea of accessing the content in the right way, finding what you want. So I think the range of different tools are out there, whether it's an enabled TV set-top box or the TV itself or a third-party app is what's going to go forward. So the idea of twin screening is almost like in some ways a bit of a mirage. It's all about making the best utility from the product. So whether in the future everyone will be using their iPad when they cost 50 quid rather than 400 quid, who knows? But the issue is that the TV market will change because when people can find great 70 shows really easily, lots more people will keep doing it. It'll become cheaper and more effective. But it isn't about TV's dead. It's not about TV sets dead. It's about the software that's not working properly for what users want.
And also, I mean, it should be noted that twin screening already does exist. And most TV shows have a website. I mean, essentially, if you went on the line while you're watching a TV show, the website's there. I mean, it's already available. It's already there. You're already making these things. It's not a big step to make them just talk to each other. I think that's where the next step comes in. So it's not like I don't think you're trying to force people to use it, but having it there if if you want it. You know, I mean, Sherlock, Being Human, all these kind of shows already have web presences or websites. If people go online, you don't have to use it, but it's already there, so you might as well let it talk to each other.
So I've got one more little factoid here. So a report from Yahoo Nielsen from 2011, 86% of TV viewers in the States, so that's pretty much the vast majority, are using their mobile device whilst watching TV. So the reality is, for rich and poor, for young and old, most people are using some form of other device when watching television. Whether it's to watch augmented experiences is a different matter, but it's
almost like you Googled this.
I have, yeah, of course.
I thought you might have. Right, let's go to the next prediction. So, audience again, by 2017, all major UK digital television platforms will incorporate socially driven recommendations. Everyone who agrees? And everyone who disagrees? Everyone who hasn't got a clue? That's the majority.
When you say socially driven recommendations, exactly what is that?
We mean, so recommendations based on what your friends or people like you in some way.
Where's that going to be displayed? I mean, is it going to go, hey, watch X because 5,000 of your friends like it? Is that what's
on set, exactly. In the same way that, say, TiVo displays recommendations. Panel, total confusion in the audience.
Well, obviously Steve should probably talk about his own product, but yeah, ZBox again and Red Discover, they do exactly that. The EPGs have always been criticised for being particularly clunky. Probably don't want to get into the topic of when Google TV will launch, but it will come at some point because television is an area that Google have expressed an interest in, and as the ultimate search engine, surely the ability to discover content via Google built into your television will come at some point, and with things like Google Plus and sort of Search Plus My World and all those other things driving recommendations, you can see that it's kind of definitely going in that direction. So I think it relies very heavily on connected TV penetration, which is still in its infancy in this country anyway.
I think it also depends on whether the broadcasters want us to. So in an on-demand setting, having social recommendation makes a lot of sense. But if you're an ITV, do you want people having a note that says, actually, your friend is watching something on Channel 4?
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to jump in there, but that's what I was asking, a stupid question, which is great. I was just thinking about it being part of the tagline of the show or something like that, but when I see that something's liked by 5,000 of my friends, not that I have that many, I think more about the friends than the show. You know, I just like, God, they're all jerks. You know, or gee, I don't think, oh, this is a good show. I think more about them, and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think it's a question of whether it's friends or experts that you help to navigate yourself
Absolutely.
through. I think it's a blend of the two. Depends how many friends you respect their opinion of. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. I think things of, you know, how many people have endorsed a particular show is a bit like a rating. I mean, nothing different from that, really.
Steve, obviously you've done some work in this area.
Yeah, I think, you know, from a technical perspective, it'll be available, whether people will use it. I think it'll be a blend of editorial curation, which is what TV channels are built around today, algorithmic recommendations, which is what Netflix are doing and what we're doing, and social will just be a part of that mix. And I think if we assume that all of the major TV platforms in the UK, the free-to-air platforms as well as the paid platforms, will be connected, you'd be able to buy a connected version in that time frame, I don't see why they wouldn't let you switch on as an option. I think individual broadcasters may have particular views on that. But if you're a platform operator, you're looking to cross-promote a large range of channels and content, so you've got no particular axe to grind. But I think it'll just be an option. I'm not suggesting for a minute. And I think what will happen is we'll all lie about our preferred shows, so people will recognise that, and we'll all be watching very highbrow, serious, factual content.
BBC 4 all the way.
Exactly, and so that will influence people's thinking about it.
Bodes ill. Let's jump on to the next one. So back to the audience. By 2017, social buzz will be commonly used to predict the success of movies, films, and games. Projects with negative buzz will be routinely cancelled, obviously before they're made, one assumes. Anyone agree with this? Yes. Anyone strongly disagree? Anybody got absolutely no idea?
Yeah.
Lots of non-voters.
I think
strongly disagree there.
Yeah.
Do you wanna...
Well, I mean, you can go back and look at a show like The Wire. That was socially huge, massive buzz, critically well respected, did nothing.
No buzz.
There are shows out there that have a massive fan base online and on social, get an enormous amount of buzz, but from a broadcaster's perspective, if they're not bringing in the ratings, who cares? So from a financial perspective, there's no way I think that a bunch of people loving watching The Wire will inherently support that on commercial broadcaster.
A great point. Panel, anyone?
I mean, I think it's sadly true because unfortunately it's not show friends, it's show business. You know, I mean, they're here to make a living. They're here to pay their mortgage and send their kids to school, right? So they're not going to make something that's going to be a disaster, even though it's terrific. Why is it? That's the problem. Where's the disconnect? It's terrific, but it's a disaster financially. Okay, but I think it's tragic if this is what's going to happen, and yet this is what's always been happening. I mean, they had research screening in 1936 of Gone with the Wind, so this is nothing new.
I think there's also a big difference between people that will talk about something and people will pay for it, and ultimately that informs the decision. So it's very well for people to talk about a movie, but unless they go and see it in the cinema, that's the only way that we're going to make money. I think the other thing is, in terms of production timelines, realistically, by the time we have a trailer or something to show people, the film's already been made. So the likelihood that we're just going to stop it there and not release it is very unlikely. But from a franchise perspective, clearly if a movie doesn't do well, it may inform the decision about whether a sequel's brought out.
Yeah, I'd also say it's all about the algorithm, so I would say that one from Google, but it's all about blending data. So I think social does have a role to play. It just is one of many different signals the production businesses will use to identify success or failure. And I think also, bizarrely, it will be, you know, going back to my esteemed colleague on my right, whose name I've forgotten, and yeah, Andrew. It's all about bringing those old shows out of mothballs. So it's almost using that to then pick out the long tail content and give it to
I mean, it feels fundamentally
consumers.
different. But there are some shows which are designed to be talked about, and if no one's talking about them, like, you know, dare I say it, you know, Big Brother on Channel 4, as it was declining gently, you know, kind of that's over. Other shows, you're not so bothered. But one,
I don't necessarily think it's all about the buzz. I think it's more about the information and the data that you can get from social. I mean, like, if there's a buzz around a show, what do you learn from that? You know, what do you learn about who's watching it, why they're watching it, when they're watching it, when do they engage with it, when do they want to buy it, where do they want to go with it? So, I don't know where I'm going with this. But you're learning about your viewers. And that informs the commissioning process. So you know, you understand that certain shows, and it also informs the scheduling process as well. Where do you put things to get the maximum impact? Because you can make something, chuck it on at a certain time, and it can just disappear. Or you can make something, chuck it on a time, and it'll fly. And that is really key, I think. Availability and timing and understanding your consumer.
I'm really glad you said that, because I feel a lot better now that you said that. Because I hate the idea that my choices are going to be filtered by logarithm or algorithm. That disturbs me. I want to have something that I'm going to hate presented to me, because I really want to keep... I don't want the stuff I know I'm going to like all the time. I don't want that. But the fact is if this is going to actually help schedule something... I mean, as a film critic or reviewer, it's my job to tell you whether you're going to like this film or not, because every film, no matter how bad it is, somebody's going to love it. And I think it's important that the content finds its market. And if that scheduling is going to help, then bring on the algorithms.
Yeah. Let's jump on. We've got one last prediction for the audience. I think this one's a bit easier. So by 2017, Facebook will face intense competition from a new generation of social products, tools, and specialist networks. Anybody violently agree? Anybody really disagree? Nobody disagrees. No-brainer?
Yeah, I think what's just happened with Pinterest, we've mentioned it a few times, it's so interesting that something just crops up and it goes from sort of 0 to, I think it had like 7 million unique users across December. It just came from nowhere. And that's a clever use of social, and those things will long continue. And it's a good thing. It challenges Facebook's dominance. That's what they're there to do. And it keeps Facebook on its toes, and certainly a lot of the recent developments I think that have occurred with Google and things like Hangouts and Circles have evolved the Facebook product, and you know will ultimately make it better. So I think it will very intense competition.
5 minutes for some questions. If anybody wants to ask anything of the panel or make their own predictions, maybe.
They deserve 10.
10. You got 10. Can you do 10? We can give you 10.
Not that I can give you 10.
5 to 10. Has anyone got any questions of any sort, no matter how difficult? One at the back there.
I just wonder if the panel thought that, considering what we've talked about, that the actual nature of television programmes being commissioned will be affected by the whole social media model. In the sense that the shows that we talked about, that were mentioned earlier, like reality shows where it's an American Idol or a TOWIE, or very youth-orientated shows like Skins, they generate a lot of social media buzz. But what about and if commissioning is based on solely on that, or is influenced heavily by that, will the nature of the kind of programs, will it become self-fulfilling in that people commission more shows just like that? And so, I don't know, Downton Abbey or something, which rates really well, which I don't know for sure, but I assume it doesn't get as much social buzz. Those shows then would... You see what I mean?
It was in that top 10 over Christmas, actually. I think
was it?
Got scraped in at number 9 on Downton. So Downton viewers are clearly on social platforms too. Sorry, I've just jumped in. But I think the answer is probably sometimes yes and sometimes not. So there will be programs that we covered the point before about there'll be programs specifically designed for that dual screen, socially integrated experience, where there's a call to action the minute the program opens, saying follow us now with this hashtag or comment on Facebook. But equally other programs where you'll be encouraged to not do so. And I can't see a time where everything would go entirely in one direction or the other. It's just ultimately a question of viewers, because we're still working to the model of more viewers equals more advertising revenue equals more shows getting made. So whilst I'm very interested in Celebrity Juice, which I mentioned at the top, because it started out really tiny and this enormous buzz grew across Twitter and Facebook, and the show's become enormous. It's now the highest rating show that ITV2's ever had. And that really interests me because social media has helped to grow that programme as a property. It's built some brand equity around that programme, but ultimately it's delivered more viewers to ITV2, which means that it's got more advertising revenue. And that's why it's a success, I think.
I think an interesting territory is how the small guys who are creating product on YouTube, almost this cottage industry of content producers, and how those guys get picked up eventually either by mass audiences or by mainstream media. So it's almost like a broadening out of the potential base of people coming up with ideas and producing assets. So almost when they go through their initial years of gathering followers on places like YouTube, then over time they become a TV celebrity in their own right. So Lauren Luke, for example, massive around makeup and all that jazz. She did it out of her bedroom in Newcastle. Amazing story, but she's one of the most respected sort of pundits on how to look good with makeup.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask because I think a lot of it so far, in social media terms anyway, and the dual screen thing, has been very much driven by us, so to speak. So we were the ones that started tweeting about programmes, and then the TV programmes started creating these platforms for us to do it, if you know what I mean. So do you think that a lot of this is going to be led by us again? When I say us, I mean the general public. And do you think that that's going to be a trend, that people will always follow the mass, and will we be people that predict the trends and what works and what doesn't work?
I think it's, in a sense, you're very right. It's come right. People were already commenting about these shows. They were already on Twitter talking about Sherlock. They were already there. So now you've got broadcasters basically kind of going, okay, well, this is now, and there's going to be some really clumsy attempts. There's going to be some really bad attempts. But I think we're going to find a happy medium where the platforms are created and then the communities come around that. I think it's important to create these platforms. I think it's important to acknowledge them, but I think it's also important for broadcasters to just get out of the way. Because if you try and moderate these discussions, if you try and control these discussions, it's going to get very messy very quickly. I mean, on our forums, we now have, over the last year, we've had a lot of sub-communities developing, a lot of very much autonomous groups, and we kind of moderate them just for any kind of, racist, sexist, swearing, anything that's really bad, but mainly we just hands off. And that's where the good conversation happens, and that's where the lasting engagement happens, because people feel that they own the process. And I think you can't underestimate the importance of people feeling that they own it rather than being told what to do.
I think what's important is that a lot of people will go into making programs, for example, hoping that they're going to be bought by somebody bigger. That's a problem. Because you feel, maybe you can't survive against the big boys. That they've got more money, they've got more clout. The best thing that can happen is for your baby to be bought by somebody bigger, and then everything will be fine. But I think what would be really nice, if, for example, we've got crowdsourcing, we've got Kickstarter. The problem is, I don't think that we could all get together in this room and, let's say, write Mad Men together. And you can play John Hamm, and you can be Christina. I don't think we can do that. But I think what's important is to be creative, try and put out a good, high-quality product, try to do it yourself, and maybe not sell out, but do try and make, I don't know, so people can feed their families and survive. You can't be a professional working for free. You can't. And I think that's a real disconnect.
To answer your question, so the first part is completely right about people talking about TV programs, and now the big broadcasters and media companies are aware of that. And I think it's going to continue that trend where the public kind of start things and the broadcasters listen because they want their content to be as relevant as possible. So they need to be able to give you access to talk about it if that means that there's going to be success. The second thing that I think is really important for us to realise and recognise is that most of these TV shows are broadcast all over the world, and everybody has a slightly different opinion of them. And The Simpsons is a really good example of this. So here in the UK, The Simpsons starts at about 6 o'clock at night, runs through to about 9 o'clock on Sky One. In Italy, The Simpsons are used in some couture, so in high, very expensive fashion. There are some parts of Eastern Europe where The Simpsons aren't allowed on television until 10 o'clock at night, and other parts where they're children's programming. And that's one brand, one episode, and it's recognised and consumed in so many different ways around the globe. So I think in terms of informing decisions about new content creation, that also has to be considered, that actually all over the kind of cultural complexities of this universe mean that different people see content in a different way.
We've probably got time for one last question. If there's anything out there at all, there must be one.
When you guys talked about social recommendations, you mentioned Facebook friends, but what about larger sort of crowdsourced trends like you get on Twitter and Twitter trending? What about that aspect of social recommendations?
Well, I think with sort of maturing of the social space, there's a sort of a new thought around the interest graph. So how do you find, you know, shared interests that you get interested in and build up that equity around a community? So I think there's a big question mark over, you know, how endorsement works.
I think crowdsource works often most effectively first things getting axed. So an anti-axe campaign is incredibly a good crowdsource. So you'll get, I mean, I think we saw it recently with Something for the Weekend, the sort of morning show. I think that got axed, and there was a big campaign. I don't know, it's still up in the air, but there's a big campaign. It's user-driven. I mean, another great example is the Rage Against Machine #1 against X Factor. You know, this is crowdsourced anti-something campaigns. It's essentially a demonstration, really. And I think a crowdsourcing works really effectively in that angle. In terms of commissioning, it's difficult to see how that would work in the things, because commissioning, unless it's bringing something back, you know, how would you necessarily crowdsource a new idea? I don't know how that would necessarily work, because they'd all have to agree this is a great idea, and then all have to come together and then pitch it. So effectively they're becoming a crowdsourced production company, which I don't know. It might work, but I think it's better when bringing things back, bringing something that's known back. That's where crowdsourcing works really well.
I think Twitter is great in that it's a public platform. So unlike Facebook, which is your friends talking to each other, you know, Twitter's entirely public, and you can draw lots of statistical information from that. And Twitter is the mob, it's the crowd. So you can definitely use that as a means of driving various different decisions.
Ladies and gents, we're just about timed out. There are people waving in the background. Can we just say a big thank you to our panel? I think the next session starts at 11, and I think there's tea and coffee out there, I suspect. So I hope you found it vaguely useful. Thank you.